Hello all, Rick here, and this is a video on the planet Romulus. Former planet Romulus. Where the Romulans are from, but not really, because they're originally from Vulcan. Anyway, it's no secret that the Romulans are my favourite Trek species, but despite that I've never really done a video on Romulus itself, which seems a bit of an oversight on my part, so let's get started on that. Romulus is located in sector Z6 of the Beta Quadrant, and it had a single sun, although in some apocrypha it was a binary star system. The star was called Eisen, or 128 Trianguli, and while the exact distances are vague in canon, Triangulum is a constellation making up many stars of varying distances, and Romulus appears to be about 50 light years away from Sol on maps. It's also known as the Romi system. In terms of naming, it's probable that, like Vulcan, the word Romulus was applied by humans to identify the system, and the name stuck, or is universally translated into Romulus for ease of storytelling. It has 5 planets, 2 of which share the same orbital path, being Trojan planets. Romulus is the second planet in the system and the larger M-class world known as Churihan in Romulan, or Rom Alosh in Old Vulcan. The second planet is a Q-class world called Remus, Chehavran, or Ravs. Remus was far less habitable, but incredibly dense in mineral resources, including dilithium. Including this delicate orbital balance, somehow Romulus also had 2 moons. It had a gravity of 1g and a diameter of 14,000 kilometers, while it had a 25-hour day. Geographically, it was a temperate world, very similar to Earth, with vast oceans and a multitude of landscapes. It did have large tracts of wetlands and marshes, which saw the earliest settlements on the planet by the precursors to the Romulans. I still want to make a video covering the exodus from Vulcan at some point, so I won't cover that here. Suffice to say, it was a very different climate from the one that early settlers were originally used to, Vulcan. These bodies of water included 10 seas of Apnex, Garena, Havirillar, Lirodin, Nelrek, the North and South Mendlanar, Sherdak, Vrekes and the White Sea, and 5 continents, Brelkar, Folos, Novok, Umrika and Valkyria. Brelkar was the largest continent by far, and had the most civilization on it. There is a large orbital defensive platform called Kurel Tenarex, which is basically their equivalent of Earth's Starbase 1. Because of the relative youth of the planet as a settled world, much of its terrain remains wild and unclaimed. To the north were vast tundra, and there were many plains and forests that were not frequented by the Romulan populace. Other areas of interest include the Valley of Chula, which housed the Praetor's summer palace and was a popular scenic spot. There are numerous mountain ranges from which the many rivers and streams flow, and there are the firefalls of Gal Gathong, with its hallows beneath. These were ancient crypts, managed by Romulan blood priests. Hot deserts are rare on Romulus, with the largest remaining being Arhael, which housed the Valley of Fire. This desert possibly is the origin of the Ahel worms seen across deserts in Romulan territory. The word is descended from the old Romulan word for ghosts in regards to how the worms emerge from underground, and the desert's name then might be an allusion to mirages. Just speculation. The capital city was Ki Baratan, which is the one we see several times in the series where the Senate and the Hall of State were located. It is the most populated city and built atop one of the oldest settlements, making up a segmented and walled circle of varying levels of technological development, such as the Crocton segment. The architecture of Romulus was a reflection of the nationalistic pride and incorporated large imposing slates of classical Romulan design, replete with the imagery of their heraldry, the raptor. The designs were modern interpretations of their more medieval styles. In real life, the designs resemble Roman architecture, just exaggerated in scale, and it reminds me of the Imperial City of Oblivion, which shouldn't be a surprise, as they both have similar real-world influences. Common throughout Romulan architecture were hidden passageways, narrow alleyways, and dead ends. all dating back to a time and tradition where confusing assailants was a necessity. Almost every Romulan abode has a hidden back door or escape route, but many are not functional, just a part of the traditional design. As there is a vast amount of land still available for people to settle, Romulan aristocracy would own both townhouses within the bigger cities and estates on their own grounds. Sometimes towns and cities would spring up around these too. Such estates were very much a matter of personal design, with some grand manors being extreme examples of the Romulan philosophy, having hedge mages and an internal layout that was equally as complex. This was pretty extravagant, even for a Romulan. Other cities included Rayteg, Dinala and its surrounding wildlife preserves, Kromtar Trell with its rich cultural institutions, and Liramnau. At the centre of Kibaratan was the Plaza of Endless Sky, an elevated 2-kilometre dais upon which the Imperial Palace, Citadel and Hall of State resided. From what we see on screens, Kibaratan does not look anywhere near as large as it is described, so maybe it's just a scaling issue with on-screen depictions. Nearby to this was the Boulevard of Heroes, where monumental statues existed dedicated to some of the Empire's most notable individuals. The Citadel Va Feldun was the headquarters of the Tal Shiar, and had an equally shady reputation, as it was said to hold dungeons, torture chambers, and all sorts of things you'd expect to find in a building owned by the Tal Shiar. The organisation monitored the entire planet, or at least did much to sow the opinion that it was always listening. This exacerbated the sense of paranoia and unease among the populace, as the secret police might catch wind of something you once said and whisk you away as a dissenter. Despite the neutral zone being established to prevent a Federation presence within their space, the Star Empire did invite other species to their homeworld for official purposes. Aside from meetings and such events, other powers maintained embassies on Romulus, such as the Cardassians. The Romulan Imperial Senate took sessions in the Hall of State, but this was not done to an easily predictable schedule. This was done to foil potential assassination plots, as the meeting times were often changing. The head of the state was the Praetor, whose word was law, and under them were the positions of Proconsul, Vice-Proconsul, and then the numerous senators. Romulus had a turbulent history with its Praetors, with several notable ones like Dideridex, who kind of went insane and started the Earth-Romulan War, who was obsessed with his legacy. In 2377, Praetor Neral allied the Star Empire with the Federation against the Dominion, and 2 years later he was bumped off by Senator Hiren, who usurped the position. He was then assassinated by Senator Tal to make way for Shinzon, who seized the position after the coup and was a human raised by Remans. Star Trek Nemesis. As you can see, Romulan politics is incredibly messy and literally cutthroat at times, with the Romulans focusing just as much on each other as against outside threats. This was the predominant factor in limiting their control and reach for most of their history, and it would prove to be the biggest obstacle, resulting in the messy destruction of their homeworld and death of many citizens. The Romulan-Vulcan unification movement was building momentum, not just in the capital but throughout Romulus. In 2387, the Romulan star exploded in an unexpectedly violent subspace event. Signs were detected 5 years prior to the event, but the Senate chose to approach it quietly to avoid panic. The Senate decided it would continue its games and subterfuge in order to evacuate its useful and compliant citizenry, while leaving behind those who it deemed were troublemakers. Of course, they did this after ensuring their own safety. Shame then that the Senate was rescued by Nero, who spaced them for their actions. Romulus was a grand planet, and I wish we'd got to explore it more thoroughly before it was destroyed. However, as verdant and lush as it was mostly a veneer, and beneath its beauty the Romulan paranoia festered, hindering its true potential. The planet too was free of much pollution and industrialization because all that was relegated to Remus, so its grandeur was tainted by that too. Many Romulans survived the destruction of their homeworld, but the one good thing to come out of its loss is the removal of the corrupt Senate, and hopefully this means an end to their manipulations, although we see that the Tal Shiar has survived and shows no signs of releasing its hold over its people or schemes in galactic affairs. So that about covers the planet Romulus. With Remus, there's not that much to talk on. It's bleak, dark, polluted and full of mines, so I probably won't do a video on that. Thanks for watching this video on Romulus, and I'll see you next time for another lore review or gameplay video. Jolan True.